Hello and welcome back to Magic Theory 101. My name is Zoe Morana and I'm here today again with Wendy.
Hi, everyone. So good to be back.
So today we are going into Chapter 7, Navigating Reality. So in this episode, I want to go over how we can navigate reality. Since we know emotions create and enhance that flow of experience, and desires are pulls, struggles are pushes, what can we do to stay in tune and in alignment? Um, so in this episode, especially, I want to talk about the concept of a divine mistake. As we know, mistakes are one of the best ways we can learn. Mistakes are like tripping forward. Every mistake you make is for your evolution. Your mistakes are divine. I feel like following this principle, we can just release the fear of doing things wrong because you'll know that even if, and especially if you do something wrong, you're still doing it right because it's for your own growth. Sometimes we can learn through example, but a lot of the time, the best way to learn for ourselves tends to be through experience. So, a divine mistake. How do we separate divine mistakes from just plain old mistakes you're making over and over again while you're living out of alignment? Well, I would say if you know something is wrong and it's not helping you expand, it's not helping you learn, but you keep doing it, you're just ignoring the cause of expansion. This cycle is not going to last, and eventually the pulls and pushes will get you moving in a different direction. Stagnation is really hard, especially with the massive shift our world is going through right now, where old systems are getting destroyed and new systems are getting created. So you'll recall, I think in the pushes and pulls of expansion, we mentioned that in front of you, there's always a light. That light guides you toward expansion. And behind you, there's always a wall. That wall pushes you toward expansion. Well, if you just stand still, that wall is just going to keep pushing and it's just going to keep pushing harder. And eventually you'll have to move. So I feel like the difference between a divine mistake and just an old habit you're stuck in is you'll feel this sense of newfound wisdom after a divine mistake. After you get over that guilt and embarrassment, you'll be like, oh, now I know, and I'm probably not going to do it again. So, for example, if you're staying in a job that you know isn't the best fit for you, that is not a divine mistake. After a divine mistake, you normally can look back on it and you can, if you really think about it, you can understand why this mistake had to happen. Like, like saying the so-called wrong thing in a situation, and then you learn how you can speak to get your point across better. Or like you get into a car accident, and then you finally learn the lesson not to drive drunk. Or maybe even just missing the train, and then on the next train you meet someone who's important to you later on. We can't always see how the universe has things orchestrated. Sometimes don't go according to plan, and divine mistakes, what they do is they recalibrate us. Divine mistakes show us new things that we didn't see before, and sometimes they just show us a new path. So, making a divine mistake doesn't always mean that we were wrong or that we did something wrong. A divine mistake is a little present from the universe to help us along on our highest path. If we can see our mistakes as divine, we will be able to be so much more in sync with the universe. If you actively harm people, including yourself every day, and you know it's wrong but you keep doing it, is that a divine mistake? Well, if you're an alcoholic, is the next bottle of wine a divine mistake? It really depends on how you see it. I would say divine mistakes are given to us as gifts from the universe to reroute our paths, to give us more realization. But if we already know it's a mistake and we keep doing it, then it's not really something that's intuitive. It's more that it's kind of become an energetic habit. All of us can improve through our mistakes, but if you're making the same mistake over and over again and you're not getting the lesson, then soon enough, a push of expansion is going to help you. This might manifest as situations becoming more painful or just you having less tolerance for these situations or having everything be really chaotic. Okay, so I want to give an example of this type of situation. If you get out of an abusive relationship and you just immediately go into another abusive relationship without taking the time to reflect on what patterns you have within yourself, like maybe your self-worth or maybe your boundaries, then it's kind of like the next cycle is probably just going to be worse. So the truth about every lesson is that if you don't do it, if you don't learn it, the universe is kind of going to make you learn it. And we all have free will, but what the universe can do is it can't make us make a decision, but it can make one decision seem increasingly appealing and the other decision seem increasingly painful. So like that unfulfilling job you're staying at, they're kind of just going to mistreat you to the point where you can't take it, or they're just going to fire you. The wall behind you, the push, is going to become so strong that at some point you just say, I can't take it. I'm going to move. I'm going to change. So, in our divine existence, we either expand or we keep staying somewhere hard to grow. Eventually, all existence is for expansion, and even though we might resist, at first out of fear, there's going to be some sort of push. That push might be anger, that push might be pain, but we need to be able to trust our discomforts to guide us. So, there's also the concept of divine destruction. When we can understand that everything we encounter has its purpose in our expansion, life is going to be so much easier for us. A lot of the time, we blame our problems instead of seeing what they're trying to show us. People get sick for a reason. Your finances are stuck for a reason. What is that reason? Sometimes it's not enough self-love. Sometimes it's that you don't believe you deserve something. But whatever problem we encounter externally is always a sign to show us something within ourselves. So, brute force is not going to accomplish much in the journey of self development if you're pushing that force in the wrong direction. Any physical disease is a symptom of an underlying problem. Sometimes it's simply the body wrecking itself before the next phase. Sometimes we need to stay in bed for a day or two eat enough food, drink enough water, and then we come out the other side a new version of ourselves. Sometimes we're just in that phase of destruction. But a lot of the time, a disease is also a symptom telling you need to change something. So, my friend used to get headaches, and those headaches would go away when she started journaling. She had too much in her head, and her head was stuffy from having too many thoughts, and she actually needed to get them out. That was what was causing her headaches. Her thoughts were stuck inside her head. I have another friend who had an injured ankle and it wouldn't heal for years. And the reason turned out to be because she wouldn't let herself dance. So by um disabling her own freedom spiritually, her body was just reflecting how she felt on the inside. I used to cough all the time, and it was because I wasn't speaking my truth and my truth needed to come out. If you or someone around you gets sick, instead of asking what you did to deserve this, see this insight as a blessing. Everything in your life is a sign to help you navigate reality. What does this problem tell you? What does this illness tell you? Sometimes we can't yet see what things are going to lead to, but we can at least get a general sense of where we are in our evolution. If you get sick right before a really big party you're hosting, ask yourself, is the universe forcing me to rest? Is it making sure I pull my energy back to myself because maybe I've been giving too much of it away to other people? Instead of seeing anything as an attack, see it as a message. Sometimes things remind you where you want to go, like a flyer on the street, and the flyer just happens to be about a topic you were interested in. Sometimes they remind you that you need to get moving. Maybe it's like that final straw in an environment that's just not right for you. Instead of tolerating being in an environment that doesn't support your growth, it just makes you leave. Or maybe sometimes messages even show how much you've grown, like someone being mean to you. And instead of you yelling at them, you realize, wow, I've grown so much. The old me would have yelled at them, but now I just don't feel the need to. I'm just okay with it. You'll realize that so much is just a message and it's not really a personal attack. We might get tests from the universe, like if you're a people pleaser and you've just decided to get over it. The universe might throw someone at you who just asks you for so much. That's your test. The test is the moment where you show yourself you've really grown. And after that, valuing yourself just becomes your new habit. If you learn your lesson, if you can show yourself you've learned your lesson, the cycle is finished. And if you don't, it just repeats again to keep showing you. So, everything around us is kind of just an indicator of our personal belief system. By observing the environment around you, the truly valuable thing you can get is insight about yourself. You are the creator of your reality. This is your world. So ask yourself, why is this happening in my world? Awareness is how we navigate reality. By having that spiritual awareness, by being able to see things for what they mean and look beyond their surface level, we are able to prosper so much in alignment. So, Wendy, I would like you to ask how you think about this method of navigating reality.
Um, so just some quick thoughts about this episode's topic. I think it's such a great topic because I'm sure everybody in their lives have experienced repeating mistakes. And I think we often view a lot of these mistakes as in a regretful way, and that makes us feel very helpless because we can't change the past. And I really love the idea of divine mistakes because you don't need to look at the mistake as a mistake, rather as a lesson or a point of learning something. So I do love this episode's topic. And going back to what I just mentioned about mistakes, you mentioned right in the beginning that if we already know it's a mistake and we keep doing it, it's not something that's intuitive. It becomes a habit, right? And you said that we never make that same mistake twice. Um, if you're making the same mistake, it's not a lesson. Oh, sorry. If you're making the same mistake and you're not learning from it, then very quickly the push of expansion will help you. Um, so I want to ask you, as you mentioned, we repeating these mistakes until we learn the lesson. But if somebody feels trapped in this cycle, whether it's like staying in an unfulfilling relationship or job, how can somebody try to break free or take like first steps to breaking free from this?
So I would say taking some good steps to break free would be really to focus on what makes you uncomfortable. Like sometimes the act of just saying to yourself, admitting to yourself, this makes me uncomfortable, or maybe writing it down when you're journaling, that can really help you realize, I don't like this. I want this to change. Because a lot of the time, when people are in bad situations, what they kind of do is they cover up their own self awareness because they don't really want to face it. But then when you really look at a problem, when you look at it directly, then it just becomes a lot easier to solve. And what the push of expansion does is sometimes it makes things increasingly painful until you just decide, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I've had enough. And then you move on.
What if in this painful process you still feel very compelled to stay in this whatever situation you're in? Like you don't know how to remove yourself from it. Um, do you understand?
Well, I would say figuring out your motivation for staying in the situation can help you a lot. For example, if it's a relationship, you can ask yourself, am I just staying in this relationship so that I feel safe? But it shouldn't be someone else that's making me feel safe. I should feel safe when I'm on my own. Or if it's an alcohol or drug problem, you could be like, am I just doing this so that I don't have to face my actual problems, so that I forget them for a while? Like, it's really important to figure out the motivation behind why you want to stay in a situation that isn't good for you.
Yeah, that's definitely a very logical way to approaching all of our decisions, right? Um, so when we feel like we're in a situation that we feel helpless in, but we're not sure how to move forward, um, can we just let our emotions kind of run its course in the situation? Would allowing our emotions to run amok make the situation like a divine mistake? Would it be wise to do something like that?
I think it's really important to be aware that we always have a choice. And so I wouldn't say let our emotions run amok exactly, but I would say if you're angry, don't tell yourself, I'm not angry. If you're scared, don't tell yourself, I'm not scared. You really need to pay attention to your emotions and see what direction they're trying to pull you in. And then you can either make a conscious choice to follow it or to not follow it. Yeah. So what were we saying?
What were we saying?
Yeah, before we got a bit distracted.
Oh yeah, I was just asking about what was it saying? Oh yeah. Would it be wise to allow ourselves to let our emotions kind of run its course, and would that be a wise thing to do?
And so I said that it's really important to pay attention to your emotions, just like it's important to pay attention to your thoughts. And we can make a conscious choice on, am I going to follow this emotion? Am I going to listen to this thought? Or am I just going to let it be? For example, like if we're really angry about a certain situation, sometimes it can be healthy to act on that anger. Sometimes it can be healthy to say, I don't want to be in this relationship. I'm so angry be- because I'm being disrespected that I just want to leave. And so we make that decision based on anger. But the reason why that decision is so powerful is because we're making it consciously, as opposed to I'm so mad, I'm gonna break this vase, I'm just gonna throw it at someone, and then later on I feel regretful because I lost control because it wasn't my own conscious choice. So really we can make the same choice, but we can it's really important that we're making the choice consciously.
Right. So being aware of ourselves, our emotions, as we discussed in the last episode, our motivation
Yeah.
for doing what we do is very important. I was going to ask you, for those going through a difficult change that they didn't choose, or where they just feel emotionally compelled to walk that path, how can they find balance between surrendering to what is happening and actively making changes? But after hearing what you said, I guess you would recommend that listeners just be more aware of themselves, right?
Yeah. Definitely awareness. Awareness is kind of where our power is. And I would say, um, when you're going through a difficult time, it's really important to ground yourself within yourself. So, what this would mean is like acknowledging that things might be hard, acknowledging that you're sad, but being aware of these things, choosing to be aware of yourself gives you the power to change it, as opposed to saying, I kind of don't feel great today, but I don't know why. It's just that sort of day. That's a really vague reason. And what we could do is we could swap that vague reason out and be like, oh, I'm not happy today because my relationship with my family isn't going great. And I feel kind of embarrassed to admit that, but that's why I'm not feeling great. And what I can do to make myself feel better is I can take myself out for a walk. It's a lot more powerful when you're able to face your own truth and to admit to yourself why something is happening.
Right. So that's that's a very powerful move, that we basically all have control over our minds, over every decision, over everything that happens in our lives. So let's just say if there's a time where I felt like I was heading down a path that didn't align with my true self, um, would you call something like that a divine mistake? And what would push me to realize this? How can I eventually redirect myself?
I would say it's really important to pay attention to if you're feeling inspired. Like, am I doing this because I feel inspired, or are my motivations for this path super vague? Like, a lot of the time when we're in a more stagnant situation, we will escape our divine truth through vagueness. And so what that can manifest as is um your reasons can just sound like, oh, that's just the way it is, or um this thing happened during my childhood and so now I can't fix it. It's like a lot of the time you'll be giving your power away. You'll just be like, this is how I feel. I can't change it. This is how that other person feels and I can't change it. This is how the world is. I can't change it. So a lot of the time those motivations will just kind of sound like some throwaway excuses when you really look at them. And so to redirect yourself, just find something that inspires you. Inspiration is your divine guiding light.
Okay, inspiration. Um, could you kind of elaborate on inspiration?
So, like, inspiration is something that excites you. It's not like, um, I'm inspired to take a shot because this shot will drown out the rest of the world. Inspiration is going to feel more like, oh my gosh, I have this cool idea and I want to do it. But a lot of the time, people neglect following their own inspiration, maybe because they have some inner child issues, and maybe because in the past, when they let themselves get excited about something, the rest of the world just takes that away. Or they tell you that what you're excited about is silly, it's ridiculous, or it's not going to work.
Thanks for elaborating on that. Um, yeah, I think there's a difference between looking for a sense of escape or distraction versus a genuine type of inspiration or motivation.
Mhm.
I think it's very confusing between the two sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Okay. I remember you mentioned something about if if we don't learn from a mistake, the universe will continue to I don't exactly remember the wording, but you said something about how it would
Push.
push us, but at the same time, perhaps we would find ourselves in that same situation again and again, almost like a repeating cycle. If we have learned this mistake, does it mean that this, whether it's person, whether it's phase of our lives, does that end? And do we kind of move into a new phase? Or would there be a manifestation of a new person that is a sign, meaning that we're done with like that old phase? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, that's basically how the world works. The world is just a mirror of our internal self. And so when we don't really see ourselves, like maybe we have an issue with our self-worth and we don't see that, And the world just keeps reflecting it to us over and over again until we finally get that lesson. And then after we learn about our self-worth, we can be like, oh, I can stop disrespecting myself now. I can stop allowing people to disrespect me now because I know my self-worth. Or maybe you have some trauma somewhere. Like maybe in your childhood, your dad was a really angry person. And so now you feel scared of anger and you repress your own anger. And when people show anger in front of you, it scares you. But like eventually there's just going to be a situation that kind of releases that pent up anger inside of you. And you can be like, oh, now I can express my anger in a healthy way. Now I don't have to keep repressing that.
Sometimes, as we've talked about in previous episodes, stepping outside our comfort zone, right? So, leaving behind what's familiar is always very, very scary and terrifying for all of us. And when we're facing similar fears of the unknown, how do we push through these choices that can lead us closer to our truth paths?
So, um, what do you mean by pushing through these choices?
Perhaps I mean something like, how do we know which choice to make is the right one? How do we navigate ourselves?
Whatever choice that we consciously choose is the right one. There might be three decisions. Whichever one we consciously choose, being aware of ourselves is the right one. And I say this not as in it'll always lead you to somewhere more comfortable. I mean that even if we make a choice and it turns out to be kind of a mistake that teaches us a lesson, it's still a divine mistake, right? And so I would say that whatever choice we consciously choose is the right one.
So what we consciously choose, like this is a really deep thing. Consciously, I mean, what is consciously? We could also still be guided by an emotion that could filter our decision making process. Would I'm not really sure exactly like conscious decision making.
So this brings us back to what I mentioned earlier about the perspective from which you're making a decision. Like, say that you're really angry and you're quitting your job, right? Are you doing this because I'm so angry I just can't help myself in the moment? I'm going to quit my job and I might regret this later, but I just can't stop myself because I'm so angry. Or am I doing it because I'm angry and I choose not to tolerate this disrespect for myself? And so I choose to quit my job because this is not a respectful situation. And this is a choice that I am making for myself. I choose this.
So you're saying that we could make the same decision, but from two different starting points or from two different perspectives or point of views, and that could make all the difference in this decision?
Yeah, that completely changes everything, your method of operation.
Well, that's something I actually didn't think about. Making the same decision but from two different starting points. Yeah, really deep. Okay, so if I notice that I'm in a situation that's holding me back, what inner or outer signs can I look for, knowing that it's time to let go?
So you can actually ask the world to kind of give you a little push. For example, when I was breaking up with someone, um, and I knew that it was time to let go, I said to the universe, okay, show me a sign of this person's true self. Give me that little extra bit of motivation that I need. And so the day after that, this person, she did something really horrible. And instead of being upset, I was like, thank you, thank you. Now I can finally just let go, move on. I have all the motivation that I need.
So, so just really trust what the universe has to show us. Um, and I guess just be more aware of our surroundings and people. Okay.
If you ask to see the truth, you always will. And it might not be a very pretty truth at first, but if you ask to see it, if you choose to see it, you're always going to see it.
Could this also reflect as behaviors that we exhibit, or is it always going to be something outside of ourselves?
Yeah, it can definitely be our personal behaviors. We can realize how destructive a behavior is after we do it in a way that really impacts ourselves, that really harms us.
Thanks for clarifying there. So you're saying that we might actually feel a sudden sense of clarity or realization, and that would kind of be the universe showing us that new path.
Yes, exactly.
Um, so divine mistakes probably calls for us to be a little bit more patient with ourselves, right? A little bit more compassionate and forgiving. Um, how can we kind of forgive ourselves um, after the fact? After we realize, oh, I shouldn't have done this, or like I spent so much time doing something, and how can we be more compassionate and forgiving for ourselves?
So, a lot of the time for me, after something that seems really horrible happens to me, or after I make a mistake and I messed up really badly, I'll the first question I'm going to ask myself is, what do I get out of this? What do I get from this? So, like, say I make a really big mistake when I'm speaking publicly and I embarrass my whole family. The first question I'm going to ask is, what do I get? And so maybe the lesson is going to be something like some people just won't listen, no matter how much you explain something to them. They're so stuck in their own cycles that they're just going to argue with you. And so they're not even worth arguing with. That might be the lesson. And so think of every mistake as an opportunity for you to receive something. What do you get from this?
How can we differentiate between a mistake and just a new path that's been shown to us? That could be a little bit confusing, right?
So sometimes a mistake is a new path. That's why it's a divine mistake. Sometimes they're the same thing.
I see. But what if this mistake is life-changing or life-altering? What if it puts you in on a completely different trajectory?
Then I guess you've moved to a completely new level because you've changed so much within yourself and you recognize that you have changed so much that you're basically going onto a new life path.
Is it always so clear cut, like this is the correct decision or this is the incorrect decision? Is it always like that, or is there ambiguity between these decisions?
Um, I wouldn't say option one is correct, option two is incorrect. I would say whichever one you consciously choose, that is the correct decision because we need to trust that whatever action we take is divinely guided, that we can do no true wrong because we exist to expand. And I know that it can be really scary to step forward when we don't really know what lies ahead. But a lot of the time, this knowledge we gain, we only realize it in retrospect. Like looking back on our past mistakes now, surely we can recognize why most of them had to happen. But right now, looking forward, we can't really anticipate what's going to come.
Yeah, I like that conclusion because it basically means there are no mistakes.
There are no true mistakes.
There are no true mistakes, and that we can confidently walk the path that the universe has pushed us into walking. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yes, that's absolutely my point.
Well, I have no further questions here, and but I've really taken a lot away from this episode.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for being on the podcast once again. And I just want to mention that this will be the final chapter we're doing for volume one. After that, we'll be moving into volume two, complex magic. So we're going to be talking about entities, spell work, possession, and exorcisms. We're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. So, um, stay tuned. The book has 10 chapters in volume one, but I'm just really tempted to move on to volume two right now because that's what really excites me. And so we are just going to skip right on over to volume two because I'm inspired to do that. So yeah, stay tuned for that and we'll see you in the next episode.
All right, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay, love you guys. Love you, Wendy. Thank you so much for listening.